Hi, I'm Danielle from Blackrock Castle Observatory, and I'm joined today by Rob, also from Blackrock Castle Observatory, and we're going to have a vent session, aren't we, Rob?
We're going to try anyway.
How you doing?
I was doing better before you told me about this Parade of the Planets nonsense.
Yeah. Did you hear about that before? Because we were talking a little bit during the week, but before I brought it up to you, did you know about it? Did you hear anything about it?
I did, but I assumed it was some kind of like Disney animation or something. It sounded like, a musical, like planets dancing along to some classical music or something. But then I realized it was a real thing that people were blowing out of proportion.
Does kind of sound like Fantasia or something like that kind of film.
Exactly.
Yeah. I heard about it from the weekend, last weekend, the weekend before. I got a text saying, Danielle, one of the moms at my kid's school is talking about the Parade of the Planets. Tell her more. And I went, I'm an astronomer, not an astrologer. And she said, that's not helpful. I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then there were a few inquiries that came through. Actually, after I spoke to you, there was another one that came up. Because Alan asked me, he's like, are we doing some event about the parade? I was like, no, I don't know what this is about. And so we kind of started digging around and trying to figure out where this is coming from, because it's not unusual. If we start getting inquiries to the castle, there's usually some kind of article written somewhere that got picked up by somebody, and now people want our input on it from the observatory. So started digging, and it looks like possibly that the first article that was written about it was from Starwalk, and it doesn't look, I don't want to say it was like a clickbait article, because in my opinion, I don't think it was written in that way. I think what happened was that this Parade of the Planets was something looked at through software. It looks like the author might have been going through something like Stellarium and said, oh my gosh, look at all the planets are in a line. And they are. And he was writing this article about the parade of planets that are going to be visible. But then that just took on a life of its own. And now I was looking actually, even today, ABC News, Parade of the Planets on June 3rd. Here's what it'll look like. USA Today, Planet Parade 2024. Here's how to view the astronomical event. I mean, it's coming up Monday, so it's only a couple days away from when we're recording this. And People Magazine has a few of articles out. Time Magazine. It just, yeah. So maybe maybe Starwalk wasn't the first, but that was the one. I think it's from back in April that was written. So I actually went in and went into Stellarium, and I started looking at it, and I thought, well, this is, yes, they are there. And if you were looking from the perspective standing on Earth, looking out into the sky, they look like they're going across our sky. But will we be able to see them? No, not really. So it's a lot of hype. And for anybody who might get excited about this, it could end up being a bit disappointing. Hence, the venting started.
And I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, or I'm not like, if I don't want to yuck your yum, or if this is like culturally significant to you, that's great. But what frustrates me is that stories like that set expectations that people are going to be able to see something different, and then they look outside, they see nothing, and they're bummed out, and then it's that much harder to engage them when there is something that they can see outside. And that's where my frustration comes from. It's not so much that, it is kind of cool that all the planets are lined up. If you do have the technology needed to go view them, it's really convenient that you can get through all of them in one night. But the vast majority of people don't. The vast majority of people are going to struggle to see anything further away than Saturn. So setting up their expectation that they can see all of these planets is just really frustrating. We saw it recently with the eclipse as well. I mean, yes, technically you could see the beginning of the eclipse from Ireland, but you'd basically need to be standing at the cliffs of Moher, looking at the sun as it's setting into the sea to see just the teeniest, tiniest sliver of it.
That's it.
And I think this kind of homogenization of the night sky into primarily Western culture, I think, has made it seem like, oh, there's an eclipse for the whole planet. And it's like, well, no, some parts of the world are going to experience an eclipse at some time. Other parts are going to experience it another time. You see similar things with, the Aurora Borealis.
Yeah.
And I think the expectation comes when, a big American news media might release a story about some stuff that's going to be visible in America, and then maybe Irish media picks it up, and then English media, and it keeps just traveling around the world until all of a sudden people in countries where they haven't the foggiest hope of seeing this thing are talking about it.
Yeah.
And it does get a bit frustrating when we're getting these queries fielded to us that are just not relevant in an Irish context.
Yeah, it actually, the eclipse was a bit of a heartbreaking one because so many people were asking about it. And then we were going, oh, it is great. No, it is a total solar eclipse is an incredible thing. And essentially, we're just getting interviewed to say, this is an amazing thing we won't be able to see. Because even on top of all of that, I think there were some images that were taken from the west coast of Ireland during we had some sent into us. But I mean, like you said, you had to be in the most specific place to be able to see it. And then the weather was horrendous. So like there was no hope in us even getting a chance to see the total solar eclipse. But even then, even the things that were coming out or the way that the information was being described over in the US, I was getting queries from home going, this is a once in a lifetime thing that'll ever happen. And this won't happen for another 2,000 years. And I was like, I said, there's another total solar eclipse going through Spain in 2026. And they said, no. And I was like, no, yeah, they do happen every couple of years. They don't happen every 2,000 years. So now these obscure things and numbers come into play where it might be that this is going to be from this time and for the next 2,000 years, this won't happen again going through Buffalo during like Easter season in April, or like maybe that won't happen in another 2,000 years, but there's so many misleading figures that get sent out around this sort of thing. And I kind of feel like this is just another example of that. And there's a bit of people approaching maybe experts. And then when they have an interview, and then if they write an article later, the message gets a little bit lost. So then we end up with these articles that come out with this kind of thing. And so with the planets, for example, yeah, they are all there. But the thing is, when it's going to be happening, it's right at sunrise, which at any time to see any planet, that's a difficult time. But Mercury's so close to the sun that one of the reasons that it's really hard to actually spot Mercury is that it's always so close to the sun. So when you have all the planets very close to the sun is rising up, the glow from the sun is going to make it incredibly difficult to see these planets, even if you do have a telescope or anything like that. So when I looked up what was visible in the night sky, if we had absolutely no Earth atmosphere, then we have a good chance of seeing a couple of them. But it looks like possibly Saturn at about 4:00 in the morning. If you're up again, if you're at a high point, because it would be really low to the horizon at that time. And it has to be before the sun comes up. And then maybe if you're really lucky, possibly seeing Mars as a speck. But like, and they're also including, I think, Uranus and Neptune in that lineup, which unless you have a really good telescope, we've got a 16-inch telescope on top of this tower inside the observatory. That telescope looks way far out into space. Even that one, Neptune, is a real small, fuzzy little blue ball. So unless you've got a 16-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain laying around, you don't have a hope of seeing Neptune. And then Uranus, same thing, unless you are in a completely dark sky area. See, even that, you have to be in a very, very dark sky area, have a good set of, you have to have good equipment. So this, because the sun is coming up, there's no chance that you're going to have light in the sky. So those two, they're saying 6 planets in a row. Yeah, they're there. You're not even going to see it. Definitely not going to see those two. And then the other ones, I think, was Jupiter and might have been Venus. But anyway, they're just, or maybe it was Mercury. They're just too close to the sun that even with equipment, you wouldn't be looking. You're not looking at through a telescope at those two anyway. So it's not really well laid out in these articles to let you understand what you're actually going to be able to see. Essentially, nothing. Maybe Saturn at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah. What I really hate about that kind of thing is that it disempowers people, because one of two things is going to happen. You're going to go out, you're going to be disappointed by what you see and say astronomers are really boring people that are very entertained by something really, really boring,
Yeah.
or I've done something wrong and I've failed. I'm
Good
not good
point.
enough to do this.
Yeah.
So it really bugs me as like an engagement tool, which, you know, these hyperinflated claims often are. It's like, well, it doesn't matter if we've exaggerated, we've got people into STEM. I'm like, well, no, you've set them up for failure. That's not good STEM outreach. Now, again, as you say, that probably wasn't the intent of the original article, and it just grew wings as people reiterated it. And as we all know, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find reliable information on the internet these days, with, you know, these AI generated headlines and fake accounts on social media. Even regular journalism sometimes, you know, gets these things wrong through a kind of a grapevine of whispers of nonsense. I recall a story myself from 10 years ago where, so my background is a zoologist rather than in space, so I'm much more familiar with when like egregious stories about animals come out. But 10 years ago, a newspaper claimed that a man in Cork had died as a result of a fatal redback spider bite. Not only did these guys do this, several other outlets then reported on that reporting, and it just became like this out of control thing. But the original story was no good.
Did it grow legs and spin a web, Rob?
It grew at least 8 legs, yes. But the red-black spider has never been confirmed in Ireland. So to claim definitively the red-back spider has killed this poor gentleman was just ridiculously unethical and irresponsible.
So there was no proof?
To begin with. But there was no proof. And it happens quite often that when it comes to animal stories, if somebody speculates something, they will take that out of context and then rewrite it as a headline. So, for instance, in this case, a woman had encountered her husband receiving a spider bite 18 months prior to his death. So even if it had been a redback spider, it doesn't take 18 months for a redback to kill you. There's no known spider that will kill you 18 months later. Jeez. So the gentleman died 18 months later of an unrelated condition. And, you know, a grieving widow was taken advantage of, in my opinion, by, you know, unethical journalists because she was trying to ascribe, you know, meaning to a really tragic situation, and people ran away with it and it grew legs, as we said. A similar situation happened in London with this type of rat snake. I think I'm not 100% sure on how to pronounce it. I think it's Asclepian snakes.
No.
They're really, really, they're little rat snakes. Like they have.
What does that mean, little rat
already.
snake? What does that mean?
It's like if a belt with an imagination.
Oh, no,
it can move around. It's nothing too scary.
Nope, that's terrifying.
They can kill like large rats and even maybe a very, very small dog. So while these reporters were going around talking to, you know, people about these snakes that they were seeing in the wild, one of the general public mentioned, well, if this thing could kill a small dog, surely it's capable of killing a child. And then the headline became, large snakes capable of killing child on the loose in the UK.
On the loose.
So it wasn't like a herpetologist that came in and said, Asclepian snakes are killing children left, right, and center. We need to panic about them. No, it was just somebody speculating out loud, somebody without the expertise, and then the journalist going ahead and running with this as a story. And again, it got reiterated and shared left, right, and center. And I can't stress how small and harmless an Asclepian snake looks. So a lot of these media outlets went ahead and used Burmese pythons instead as the image for
You're joking.
the snake. Yeah. These snakes have been in the UK for like 50, 60 years now. They're not native to the UK. They shouldn't be there. They're like escaped pets or something that breed in the Regent's Canal. And, you know, as a former invasive species researcher, like, I see why people might want to get rid of them because they're not good for the environment or whatever. But they're absolutely not going to chase you down and kill you or your children. They're just not capable of that. And I would love if newspapers were talking about invasive species and why we need to manage them for like biodiversity purposes and ecosystem purposes. But if we get people to want to get rid of these things for the wrong reasons, it's because we're lying to them. And if people are doing stuff because they've been misinformed or misled, that's always a bad thing. And that's why I get really bent out of shape about any kind of misleading headlines or stories about space stuff as well, because I know it seems innocuous, but it's just the start of a very slippery slope of people feeling like they can't stay informed, which is really, really frustrating. in day-to-day life and making, educated decisions about your health, about, who to vote for in politics, or, how to deal with things like climate change on a, personal level. We need people to feel like they can trust information so that they can make better decisions.
Yeah, it does breed a whole distrust in the scientist. And it is a bit heartbreaking because they're not going to write, like you said, there are ways to deal with invasive species, and it'd be great to get that kind of information out there and say why it's important. But like, who's clicking that headline? Who's going, yeah, that's going to be so interesting. Can't wait to read that article. Other than people like you and me, So then you have these kind of titles that come out, and it is, especially with astronomy. I'm not going to say like herpetology is not fantastic, but just, I don't do snakes. Are snakes even part of that?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I don't do any of that.
Means to creep, so it's all the animals that creep along the ground.
Well, see, like lizards don't bother me that much as long as they don't have like super long tails and look like a snake. Fine, but like, no snakes. I'll just stick to the stars, thank you. But astronomy for me, and I think yourself, like you've been in astro for a while now. It is a really beautiful science. It's a beautiful thing, and one thing I really love about it is that it is really accessible because it's not something that you need to have expensive equipment for. You can start getting out there and looking at the night sky, looking at the stars, and you can do that without just your eyes. Go out and look up at the night sky. And so for me, it's a really accessible science, or maybe a gateway into the actual science. And so I hate the idea of a little kid, for example, looking at this article. Like myself at 8 years old would have been like, oh my God, the planets are going to be in the sky and they're going to be huge and I'm going to see 6 of them at the same time, because that's what I would think. And,
right.
If you were looking at that and that is your expectation, and then you go out and you're like, I see nothing. I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's just, and then, or even if you do know what you're looking for, say you just got a telescope and you want to get out there and you're so excited because you just got it for your birthday or Christmas or whatever. And you're like, I'm finally getting out to see something cool. And you see absolutely nothing. 100%. I could see that telescope going back into the closet, packed up, never going outside again. And I am, as a really passionate telescope owner, that breaks my heart more than anything else.
Yeah.
I have like visions of like every Christmas, after Christmas, I think of like, that Sarah McLachlan, I don't know if you know this advertisement when she like sings. Yeah, that one.
The angels.
That's Sarah McLachlan, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so.
I like, if you could replace all the animals with telescopes, that's what I think of in my So yeah. I don't like the idea of these sorts of articles deterring people from it. And also fostering this distrust in scientists and experts who actually know. Because it's heartbreaking even when we have journalists that call and around articles like this and go, so tell us what we're going to see, this amazing thing. And we'll be like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you want to like try to use that question. At least I do when I have, if I get interviewed about something like this, I'm thinking, okay, people are interested. I want them to stay interested. So maybe try to spin that so that it's not, you're going to see nothing. This is a joke. Don't pay attention to these articles. They're ridiculous. Try to figure out a time when I go, oh, do you know what? This won't be a great time, but in a couple of weeks, you will have Saturn visible and it won't be 4:00 in the morning. And if you've got a pair of binoculars, even, you can get out there and see it. So I try to at least encourage a listener to that question that might be hearing that question to still try to be like, debunking, but without being so negative about what's actually happening. Because it can be used as a teaching moment, I guess you could say.
Or even like I through working at the observatory now, I'm actually better informed than your average member of the public on what we can see. And I've become so disillusioned by this nonsense that even I don't go out and look for stuff. I almost missed the recent aurora because I saw that we had a query from a journalist who, had seen, a story saying that the aurora would be visible from Ireland. And I'm like, okay, this is the same as always. Yes, you can probably see them a little bit if you're far enough north. I didn't realize there was this huge geomagnetic storm that meant you were going to be able to see it pretty much everywhere. So I didn't even bother to go outside and look. I just assumed it was another one of those cases of somebody overinflating what we were actually going to be able to see. And just through pure luck, the dog needed to go to the bathroom at like 11 o'clock at night. Took her out, and as I was looking up at the night sky, just waiting for her to do what she needed to do, I was like, that looks a lot more purple than usual. Where's that green stuff coming from? And I'm like, is that the aurora? And I saw the aurora borealis for the first time in my life through pure luck, just because I didn't trust the media report that I saw coming in. I was like, it's just, an exaggerated thing again. And again, it was beautiful. And we got really, really lucky this time that it was such a powerful storm that it actually was really intense colors. Because I think another aspect of astronomy that can sometimes lead to people getting a little bit disillusioned is they're seeing these enhanced photos. And there's, loads of legitimate reasons why you would do that. But when you share it on social media, then without, explaining that you have exaggerated the color to make them easier to see, etc., people expect to go out and see something with that clarity and that intensity.
Sure.
And then when they go outside and see something that's slightly fuzzy purple or whatever, they're like, I don't think I saw the aurora borealis, or they might be a little bit underwhelmed. But the thing is, you don't need to be underwhelmed. Like, to see with the naked eye what I saw was so cool. And like, I spent a good hour outside. Like, I had a pain in my neck the next day from how much I was looking straight up at the sky, and it was really, really cool. Like, it felt like a once in a lifetime thing, and it was disappointing that there weren't more people out there to see it. It was kind of felt like it flew under the radar a little bit at first.
Yeah, well, I'm disgusted because I never even asked you. I didn't know that you got to see it. I saw nothing, so I kind of hate you even more than I did when we started this podcast. Yeah. I'm actually disgusted. I saw absolutely nothing, and I have not admitted this, but I was one of those people that was disillusioned by having. How many times have we had people asking about the aurora? And because we're so far south here in Cork, now you're a little farther north, so it's a little different. But if they're going to see them in Ireland, typically it's far north. If they get that far south. And so I 100% thought, and I knew about the storms. I actually did know that this was a big deal. But because it's happened so many times, this whole the boy that cries wolf scenario, I was one of those people that was disheartened. And I was like, do you know what? All these people are going to try to go outside and see the aurora, and they're going to see nothing. I'm not bothering to do that. I'm going to stay in, and of course, I missed everything, and then it was flooded with photographs from everyone that went out. And because I do remember even when we were up in Belfast, there was an aurora alert, and Francis and I did go out, even though we had an event early in the morning, and we're like, let's go out, let's go try to see the aurora. And I was all excited about it. And it happened when I was in Scotland too. There was an aurora alert, went out, nothing. And I was like, no, this is Cork. We're so far south. There's not even a point. It'll be somewhere up north that they might get a glimpse of it. Absolutely disgusted with the photographs that I saw coming in from Cork and Kerry and everywhere else. And I'm just like, I can't get over the fact that I missed that. So I'm going to blame bad journalists for that. That's my venting session. I'm actually so mad.
But the thing is, even the like, that was cool. I mean, I can't deny that was cool.
Yeah, great, Rob. Tell me how amazing it was. Go on, continue.
But even the less obviously impressive stuff, if you give yourself time to add context to what you're looking at, it can become, more than normal. Like, I can't remember what the name of the mission was, but I think it was the Mars Quake bot that they sent to the Red Planet maybe 4 or 5 years ago now.
Which may or may not be visible on Monday in this parade of planets.
Yeah, but Mars was visible at the time. And I was able to be on, I think it was Twitter at the time, looking at a countdown for when they were going to reach the planet. And I was able to look at that little red dot out there and go, we sent a machine from our planet all the way to that red dot. And as I'm looking at it, something human-made is being landed on the surface of that dot so far away we can only just about see it.
Was that not
Perseverance? And it was really humbling and cool. It was the Mars Quake.
Was it? I remember there was a landing where we actually did have clear skies out, and we could actually watch or see Mars at least while it was happening. And yeah, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, it is a really humbling experience to be able to look at something in the sky and know something man-made is going to be on it. And that kind of stuff I think is fascinating. There's so much really cool stuff happening right now in space. We're about to be able to do that with the moon pretty soon. You know, we have the Artemis missions that are in full swing and on track for taking people back to the moon, and be able to actually look out into the night sky and know that there'll be possibly a village being built out there soon. Like, there's so much cool stuff happening. So in my mind, I'm thinking there's no need to fabricate these stories. Right. Because there's so much other stuff that you don't even have to do anything special about. Like, you just talk about what's happening, and maybe it's just I'm in this for too long, and that I love this stuff, that for me I'm just like, that's cool. Maybe it does need to be a bit clickbaity. I don't know. But what do you think we can do to, like, is there a way to get around these kind of articles from being written? Or is it one of these things where it's been going on, this people know they have to sell newspapers and articles and get clicks, that they're just going to keep doing it, and the AI is not going to make it any better? Or is there a light at the end of the tunnel? What do you think?
Well, I think celebrating the mundane, like I just said, and mundane is, like, I use that with a strong air quotes around it, is probably a really good way to go. Like, even just seeing a beautiful, like, unspoiled night sky is something that most people haven't actually encountered. And it's reasonably easy to access here. You just have to go to a dark sky park. And, you know, we can talk about fighting light pollution and, you know, larger conversations about, you know, bringing the night skies to the people on another occasion. But there are places you can go to see something, and, you know, you're not waiting for a special time when, you know, Jupiter is on top of Mars, is on top of Saturn, while, you know, the Milky Way is spinning around in circles or some nonsense. It's just always there, and it's always beautiful. And something like 50% of us haven't seen it. I think it was...
is it the light pollution, Rob, or is it just the weather? Because I was, like, waiting for a special time. I was like, a clear sky is a special time.
Yeah, but you know what? A bad day spent in Killarney National Park is still a good day. That's so, true, yeah. You know, worst case scenario, you've gone to a place of outstanding natural beauty, and there may be clouds overhead, but, you know, you've gone out and you've immersed yourself in nature regardless. And, you know, take a second, third, fourth, however many tries it takes to see the Milky Way. And that in itself is going to inspire an interest. We've got this Nova coming up later in the year, which it sounds like it's the most mundane thing ever. Like, to the naked eye, what's going to happen is you're going to look at a patch of sky that doesn't have a star in it. For a while it will have a star in it, and then the star will go away again. That doesn't sound all that impressive, but when you think about what's actually happening there is a white dwarf star pulling material away from a red giant nearby at such a rate that every 80 years it eventually blows off in this thermonuclear explosion at a predictable rate. Not only are we able to tell that that's coming in 4 months and we can look at it and see it happen, it's already happened 3,000 years ago. We're looking at time travel, basically, and space at the same time. Like, it's that far away that not only is it going to happen, it's already happened probably an additional 30 times since. It's like, that blows my mind. I don't know how that doesn't blow other people's minds. But looking at the night sky is an exercise in time travel. And when you give yourself permission and time to think about that kind of stuff, it's humbling, it's, you know, mind expanding. You know, it's something that we can encourage people to do, to, like, look at the everyday things that are always accessible to them with a greater appreciation. And then if we're lucky, you know, we get to take our dogs out at 11 o'clock at night and stumble across absolutely majestic, once in a lifetime kind of experiences like aurorae and eclipses. Yeah. But, like, there is always going to be something. Like, if you add enough qualifiers to a thing, you can make it unique. Mm-hmm. So we have lunar cycles of, 28 days, 28.5 days?
9, yes.
And we have months that are outside of February, not 28 days. So every once in a while, some phase of the moon has to happen twice in a month. It just has to. It's just like the roll of a dice. If I roll a 6-sided dice 7 times, one of the numbers is going to show up twice at least. But we've taken to naming them. If it happens twice in a month, it's a blue moon. If it happens twice in a moon on a Wednesday or some, you know, there's probably some other name for it. And they've all got these weird names. Like they end up being things like the supermassive blue double red moon. Like there was one a few years ago. It sounded like a Power Rangers Megazord or something. And people were expecting such great things from it because
something.
Yeah,
it was there. I think there were 4 names. It was something super blood moon. So it was a super blue. It was a super blood blue moon. Something like that. But yeah, it was one of those things where they all kind of just lined up at the same time, and they happened to be like that kind of that is kind of. And
when you read a story about it, people are like, "Oh, I must go out and check the moon. It's up to something unusual tonight." And then they look outside and they're like, "No, it looks the same as it always did, more or less."
Yeah, it's more the labeling is what seems to catch people, because it's the labeling that makes that interesting. But the moon itself isn't really looking that different than it is any other night. If you go out for the full moon next month, it's gonna probably look pretty much the same. Now, blue moons are not blue moons. Blue moons don't look like anything. The super moons do look slightly larger, but that's about it. Because on the other side you have micro moons, and they look a little bit smaller. So you might notice a difference if it's. For me, I'll tell you, regardless of whatever it's labeled, a full moon rising is a really cool thing. So if you get a chance to see that, if you get to a place where you can get to maybe a high point where you can kind of see, it doesn't have to be the horizon necessarily, it can be mountains and things, but if you can see a good distance from a high point, a full moon coming up is probably one of my favorite things. I love the moon anyway. But yeah, like you said, you don't have to wait for these incredible lunar events. Other than lunar eclipses are cool. That is a bit more interesting.
Every once in a while, culture and the night sky clash in what our colleague Niall described as a beautiful accident of symmetry. Like, it doesn't actually mean anything, but when a mountain is in a particular orientation, for instance, Bunane Heritage Park have a stone circle, and later this year, for the first time in 18 and a half years, the moon is going to ascend at a particular rate that if you're standing in the middle of the stone circle, it looks like the moon is climbing the mountain. And then it will rest on top of this altar. And that's cool. It's fun. It's not scientifically significant or anything, but it's still cool.
Yeah.
It's going to make for a really nice experience, and I would really encourage anybody who has the opportunity to go out there and check it out.
Yeah.
It will probably be cloudy when you do, but still, Bunane Heritage Park is still really cool, and I recommend you visit.
But yeah, it's cool, and something like that lines up with something culturally significant. It gives a little bit more meaning to the moment. Scientifically, it might not mean that much, but I think even a scientist can appreciate that sort of an event happening, because it's just kind of cool. A moon climbing a mountain, that's kind of cool. Doesn't change the moon in any way. The moon doesn't even know it's doing it, so it's nothing spectacular about it. But for life on Earth, that might look a little more interesting. Yeah.
Now, I will say I am hopeful, because even though blowing this stuff out of proportion does, I feel, discourage people from, maybe coming to the observatory and learning more, because they're like, astronomy is not for me. A lot of people have seen these beautiful images of Saturn from the Hubble, or from other space telescopes that have blown it up into this beautiful, clear, incredibly detailed image. And I'll show it to people and be like, oh yeah, that's cool. When I show them Saturn through a 3-inch telescope where it looks like a slightly smudged beam, I have never once not heard a person say, wow.
Yeah.
You seeing it yourself with the naked eye and knowing that it's real and absorbing it yourself always makes this more personal, and it touches you in a way that's kind of hard to quantify. It's like the first time I saw a white-tailed sea eagle was up close and personal in Fota Wildlife Park. It was this big, huge bird, and it was really cool, but it was in a cage. And then I went to Glengariff National Park, and one of the guides pointed out this silhouette floating through the night sky. Or not the night sky, the daytime sky, but it was just this black silhouette. I couldn't actually define what the bird was, but he's like, that's the white-tailed sea eagle. That silhouette was so much cooler to me than the big, impressive eagle that I saw in captivity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because it was out in nature,
where
it belonged, it was thriving, it was felt more personal to see this thing thriving where it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm still seeing people excited to see the slightly less impressive version of Saturn than they are by the big cool Hubble images is really, really cool. And I think that there is always room to salvage any kind of step we may have lost through kind of, I won't say deliberately bad, but slightly reckless journalism and this clickbait culture that we are unfortunately living through.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is also hope that that's going away to an extent as well. I feel like it's just a mechanism that people are getting tired of engaging with. Like social media users are getting sick of it. Their, social media platforms are struggling to retain users as they lean into it. I'm hopeful that we'll see a return to some of the more traditional journalism and more responsible journalism in the next few years. Fingers crossed.
My hope is, especially working with kids, because obviously we're here working with children all the time in different student groups and things. And working with them, I become very hopeful for the future because they're smart. These kids are smart. And for my hope for the future is that, like these digital natives that are coming up and they don't know anything. They don't know a non-digital world. They don't know media that isn't going 24/7 or that it can be accessed from multiple platforms. They don't know what that world is like. I think we're in that weird group, being millennials, that we bridge that gap. We know what it's like, and now we're also getting through that where our parents' generation is suffering. And I feel like my mom she loves the night sky. She gets really excited when she sees articles, and then she'll send me things, and then I feel really bad when I have to go, no, Mom, none of that makes any sense. But I feel like the younger kids will probably be so used to this kind of thing that it'll become very natural for them to be able to weed out, well, that's not true, or oh, that was written by AI, because they'll just be raised in it. They'll know what's real, what's not. Not all the time, obviously, but I think that hopefully my hope would be that they actually get better at weeding out truth from fiction, fact from fiction. So that's my positive spin on my venting session here.
Yeah, it's not all doom and gloom.
No. And I found it really...
I'd be out of a job.
What?
If it was, I'd be out of a job.
So I think I feel better. Do you feel better? I feel like I got things off my chest there.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
I'll wrap this up with right after we had the conversation about like we should talk about this. I found this meme which was just great. So I'll read what it says on here. It's from Science Humor, and it says, "Scientist, my discoveries are useless if taken out of context." And then it says media. Then it has a title for the article. "Scientists claim their discoveries are useless." Just thought that was brilliant. I was like, oh, perfectly sums up what we were chatting about. So I think we can end this there. And I'd love if anybody who's joined us today and has listened to us rant and rave about science communication, if you have articles that also drive you crazy, we'd love to hear it. Share them away, whether they're space or maybe herpetology. If they're about snakes, save them. I don't want to hear but send them in. If you have questions about any eclipses or anything coming up, let us know. If you have any space questions in general, Rob and I are going to keep this going and have chats about different topics each week, and just talk about what's happening in the space world and what's going on in Ireland as well and around the country. And we hope you enjoy listening to us banter back and forth. Any final thoughts, Rob?
Well, I mean, we've talked about how we're going to keep this going week on week after spending the better part of an hour saying there isn't stuff up there week on week, but yeah, we'll see how we make that work.
There's a lot of exciting things happening in space, Rob. Keep the faith. Or scientifically accurate information. All right. Well, we'll sign off there. Thanks for joining us today. Rob and Danielle from Blackrock Castle Observatory, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye.